The other reason is because I think the government does not want to set a precedent where they admit to a mistake and then have to restore, have to basically go back on what their decision is, because it plays a role in their broader goal of using El Salvador and the CECOP facilities as a concentration camp you will never return from.
Escalating legal and constitutional battle over the Trump administration's deportations. A federal judge is threatening to start a contempt investigation for willful disregard of his order to halt deportation flights under a law meant for wartime. Chief White House correspondent Mary Bruce has the story. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning, George. This is a dramatic escalation in the fight between the Trump administration and the courts. A federal judge arguing the administration defied his court order and then boasted about it in a scathing rebuke, saying willful disobedience of judicial orders without consequences would, quote, make a solemn mockery of the Constitution itself. This morning, a federal judge is threatening to open a high-stakes contempt investigation into the Trump administration for deporting more than 200 Venezuelan migrants to a notorious prison in El Salvador, despite the judge's order that they be returned to the U.S. immediately. Questioning why the administration allowed these flights last month to go ahead, Judge James Boasberg declaring the administration displayed a willful disregard for his order, determining there was probable cause to find them in contempt. The judge saying he will begin contempt proceedings if the administration does not give each deportee the chance to challenge their detention. Boasberg even proposing appointing an independent lawyer to prosecute the government for contempt. The president has boasted of the deportations, claiming without evidence that the men are all violent gang members. But the administration is facing growing backlash over the status of this man, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, an undocumented migrant from El Salvador. He was living with his American wife and children.
What's a contempt proceeding? One of the powers that a judge is basically a god inside of the courtroom. So one of the powers that any judge has is to hold people in contempt. So if there is a lawful order that the court presents and a citizen or non-citizen, like anybody, refuses to abide by that lawful order, they have the capacity to basically fucking arrest you and jail you. And then outside of the courtroom, they're a peasant. Okay, wouldn't go that far, but yeah. If you are found in contempt of a court order, you can literally be jailed for an extended period of time. Yeah, by the way, do you want to know why it was good that I didn't cover the shooting story instantly as some demanded? The local news affiliate that covered the story said that there were 5 deaths, and then they had to erase. They had to like literally go back on their initial coverage. So that's the reason why I don't immediately cover mass shootings, okay? Yeah, they had to rescind it.
In Maryland when he was put on that plane,
and retract
despite a 2019 court order that he not be deported to his native country because he might face danger there. A mistake the administration previously acknowledged. In a unanimous ruling, the Supreme Court ordered the administration to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release. But the president, who is paying El Salvador $6 million to keep the migrants, says it's up to that country to send him back.
The entire purpose has been to bring Abrego Garcia home.
Visiting El Salvador, Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen says he asked the country's vice president why they're keeping Abrego Garcia.
His answer was that essentially the Trump administration is paying the government of El Salvador taxpayer money to keep this person here, despite the court order.
The White House insists Abrego Garcia is a violent gang member, even though he has not been criminally convicted in the U.S. or El Salvador. In 2019, a confidential informant named him as a member of the MS-13 gang, but judges have found that evidence unconvincing. The White House now noting that in 2021, his wife obtained a temporary protective order against him, but no charges were ever filed, and that case was later closed. Now she's fighting for her husband's safe return, but the administration says that will never happen.
He is not coming back to our country. President Bukele said he was not sending him back. That's the end of the story.
The White House is standing by their actions, and just days after Trump welcomed the president of El Salvador here to the White House, Trump saying he would send even more deportees to that notorious prison if they had room. ABC News Kelly plans to double the size of that facility.
The prison in El Salvador, where Kilmar Abrego Garcia was sent, the Trump administration says by mistake, is...
A lot of people ask why there is no proof of life here, or why they refuse to entertain this, or they refuse to reverse the decision and make up for their mistakes. And a lot of the speculation, understandably, revolves around the notion that Abrego Garcia is most likely dead, killed in this CCOT facility. The reason why I don't entertain this without any proof whatsoever is because, one, I think it's an unproductive speculation to entertain. And two, because I think there is a different reason. I do. While I understand why people feel that that this is the worst outcome and it might have happened, the reason why I don't want to entertain it, aside from the fact that I think it's disrespectful to the victims, disrespectful to the family, and I don't want to, you know, I don't want to cut away at like the idea that he is someone who can still be returned to U.S. soil. The other reason is because I think the government does not want to set a precedent where they admit to a mistake and then have to restore, have to basically go back on what their decision is, because it plays a role in their broader goal of using El Salvador and the CCOT facilities as a concentration camp you will never return from. Their goal is to use El Salvador and CCOT as a concentration camp that you cannot return from. It's a camp, functionally. It's a de facto camp. The other reason is because it would offer direct voice to the cruelty inside of these facilities from someone who has been returned from these facilities. And I think that it would be too much for even the racist Americans to bear. That's why it would turn into Trump 1 with the deterrence policy that Trump 1 implemented quickly falling apart and even playing a role in Trump losing the election. The child deterrence policies were so horrible and so horrifying that it literally made Republicans go, okay, we don't want this. This is too much. Even just Americans were like, all right, well, that's a bridge too far for me. They can't have that, especially because that would totally ruin their grand design here. That would totally ruin their greater goal, their greater cause, the ultimate goal of using this as a concentration camp or a slave labor camp that is outside of the reach of America, even though it's not outside of the reach of America, obviously, but like to claim that it is outside of the reach of America.
It's one of the largest maximum security prisons in Latin America. In recent weeks, that prison has become a kind of photo op for members of the Trump administration and his Republican supporters in the U.S. Congress. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem toured the prison in March, posting an Abu Ghraib-style video and photos of herself in front of a crowded cell. This week, Republican Congressman Jason Smith of Missouri posted his own photo from inside the prison in El Salvador. So did Republican Congressman Riley Moore of West Virginia, who shared this photo, double thumbs up, in front of the cells of the prison. Today, another lawmaker arrived in El Salvador, this time a Democrat, and he's there for a very different reason. He is the senior senator from the state where Kilmar Abrego Garcia lived with his family until the Trump administration had him arrested and took him to this foreign prison in a move the administration, again, admitted was what they called an administrative error. Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland landed in El Salvador today with the hope that he might see Mr. Abrego Garcia or be able to talk to him.
I hope to meet with some high-level government officials from El Salvador. As I've said before, the goal of my visit is to talk to people here about the release of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. I told his wife and his family I would do everything possible to bring him home and we're going to keep working at this until we're successful. I also hope to have the chance to meet with him, but we'll have a better idea if that works out a little later on.
Senator Van Hollen landing in El Salvador today, hoping for a chance to meet with Kilmar Abrego Garcia in that prison. Senator Van Hollen says the vice president of El Salvador told him he would not be able to do that when he met with him today. Joining us now for the interview is Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland, who joins us from El Salvador. Senator, thank you so much for what you're doing and for being here with us tonight. I know it's been a very long day.
It has, Rachel, but as you said in the intro, I promised Kilmar's family that I would do everything I could to bring him home. A court in the United States has determined that he was illegally abducted from the United States and landed in the most notorious prison in El Salvador. So that's why I raised these issues directly with the vice president of El Salvador. The president is not in the country now, so I met with the vice president to talk about these issues and ask for the opportunity to go visit Kilmar.
What's sort of the range of potential outcomes here that you think are possible? What are you hoping to accomplish on this trip? And how did those expectations match up with the experience that you had today meeting with the country's vice president and hearing what you did from him?
Well, my goal is to keep a spotlight on this issue until justice is done, until the 9-0 opinion by the Supreme Court is implemented by the Trump administration, which is ignoring entirely that order that they need to facilitate his return. I asked the folks at the embassy whether they'd been ordered by the administration to do anything to facilitate his return. The answer was no, so they're clearly not in compliance. And I said to the vice president of El Salvador, look, you've got somebody in your worst prison, the prison for terrorists, who the United States court has said has committed no crime. And so I asked him if he had any evidence that Kilmar.
The United States, much like many other countries, also has a non-extradition policy for prisons that are even worse somehow than American prison conditions, for the record. And that is for people who have done crimes on Salvadoran soil. So if an American citizen had done a crime on a Salvadoran soil, the U.S. literally would not send the American citizen to El Salvador. Up until this administration that is entertaining people that have done crimes as Americans on American soil to be shipped off. This, in the United States history, has never happened. Okay? Exile is not a thing that the United States government has ever done. Ironically enough, it is one of the fundamental principles that started this nation. This is a literal fucking prison colony because the British used to do this and they kept sending more prisoners from England to the United States of America. This was literally part of the gripe that the founders had. It is perhaps one of the most unconstitutional acts of all time. Australia is the same as the United States of America. So there's never been a moment where the American government went, you are an American citizen, but we are going to ship your ass to a different country. With one exception, I believe, I was listening to an NPR piece on this. There were some Chinese Americans that came back from China after spending a period of time there. And I believe they were stopped at the border. Like they were stopped from entering the country. I think that was like one of the only instances that's still in this circumstance is like not an instance where like an American citizen has ever been fucking exiled from inside of U.S. soil. It happened to Mexicans in the 50s. Yes. The only other time where it took place was the Bracero, in the aftermath of the Bracero program, where Operation WB I'm just going to say it, Operation Wetback, which was the official, it's racist, but the official name for it. When that took place, they actually took Mexican Americans, like Americans of Mexican descent, and other Latinos that were American citizens and accidentally deported them as well in these dragnet operations. Interestingly enough, that is what Donald Trump has championed. Okay? Donald Trump has championed this policy. He's talked about this operation as a wonderful one that he wants to repeat when he was running for office. I explained it. Okay?
was a member of MS-13 or had committed any crimes? And he said, no. So I asked him why he was keeping Kilmar in prison here. And his answer was that essentially the Trump administration is paying the government of El Salvador taxpayer money to keep this person here despite the court orders. So my goal, Rachel, is to make sure that we keep the spotlight on this issue because I think it's unsustainable. It's unsustainable to continue to keep a person who has not been convicted of a crime in the worst prison in El Salvador when the Trump administration admitted itself to a judge that this was a mistake. But instead of fixing the mistake, they fired the Justice Department lawyer who admitted it was a mistake.
I just want to underscore what you just said there, that you were told by the U.S. Embassy in El Salvador that they have received no request from the White House or from the Justice Department, from any other entity in Washington, asking them to take any steps to obtain the release of Mr. Abrego Garcia. Presumably, it's the local U.S. officials at the embassy there who would be the relevant point of contact, first point of contact for the U.S. government trying to attain that outcome, correct?
Well, that's exactly right. And it is pretty clear that the Trump administration has not lifted a finger to implement that court order. And so I think it's important that the courts know that, and they will know that. And again, denying his family an opportunity to even have a phone call with Kilmar is just a gross violation of basic human rights and human decency. And, I asked the vice president if I came back next week, whether or not I could go visit Kilmar. And the answer was no, he couldn't guarantee that. I said, look, I may be the first member of Congress here, the first senator, but I can assure you more will be coming. And you cannot continue to keep this man locked up in this worst prison in El Salvador and one of the worst in the hemisphere when he hasn't committed a crime. And so we're going to keep at this. And I asked the vice president just to let him out the gate, because you may remember at the White House, the president of El Salvador said, well, we can't smuggle Kilmar back into the United States. He said, you don't have to smuggle him back to the United States. We know you can't do that. Just open the prison door. And Attorney General Pam Bondi said the United States would send a plane down here. And if she doesn't, at least he would be free for now in El Salvador as we work to find a way to get him back into the court system and due process. Again, nothing.
You mentioned that other...
So...
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No,
I think you...
There's other senators that are going, by the way. For those of you saying, like, bullshit, I don't think that other senators are going. No, even Cory Booker has, like, seen this as an opportunity to at least like do Cory Booker propaganda, but it's great. You should do this.
I mean, this is of course about the family and making sure the family gets justice. But it's also, as you say, about the Trump administration trying to deprive individuals in the United States of their liberty without any due process, right? This is like taking away people's freedom. That does not sound like a conservative idea to me. That is something that, of course, authoritarian governments engage in, and it's a very fast road to tyranny if we don't all stand up against it.
You mentioned the possibility, and now it seems like the likelihood that other members of Congress are going to make their way to El Salvador. Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey has expressed interest in going. Congressman Maxwell Frost, the young congressman from Florida, has formally requested a congressional delegation, a CODEL, to El Salvador. Given that a couple of
the media tour sadly reflects the values of the Democrats. I don't care, man. What are you talking about? Who gives a fuck? Yes. It's done for optics, but you're putting bodies on the line. It's fine. Why the fuck don't you run for office instead of just constantly shitting on every single Democrat in government all the time? This is literally me defending Democrats in government. What are you talking about? Are you all right? I'm currently defending the Democrat in office doing the right thing, and even defending him against chatters who are yelling at the congressperson for doing the right thing.
Of Republican members of Congress who are supporters of what Trump has done using this prison have somehow gotten into the prison and been able to take photo ops there, given that the Homeland Security Secretary, Kristi Noem, was able to get in and do a photo op there. I wonder what you make of the El Salvadoran government sort of opening the door to allow Trump administration officials and Republican supporters of President Trump in there to make essentially social media content while still denying you the opportunity to get inside.
Well, you're right. That's clearly what's happening. I mean, you have the government of El Salvador, the president of El Salvador, make this deal with the Trump administration. I think it's $15 million that the Trump administration is going to be paying El Salvador to essentially take these folks from the United States who have been denied due process in the case of Kilmar. And again, Republicans seem to be happy to take photo ops at this site and celebrate the fact that the president of the United States is ignoring court orders and that the government of El Salvador is keeping this guy locked up who's committed no crime at all. So I do think, though,
by the way, this will also perfectly demonstrate why I'm so resentful all the time of the idiotic Nancy Pelosi time and time again, which is that there is we want a strong Republican Party. This is not normal. The Republican Party is not Trump, and Trump is not the Republican Party. There's a different Republican Party out there. No, there isn't. Shut the fuck up. You are a delusional monster at this point. If you go, oh, there's got to be a real Republican Party out there, a strong Republican Party. It's like, no, you don't want that. The Republicans never say we want a strong Democratic Party. They've never said that because they're not fucking stupid. Here it is, your strong Republican Party in full display. This is what the strong Republican Party does. You like it? I certainly don't. The idea that these fucking geriatric Nazis are going to behave any differently than they have so far is stupid. At least the Democrats, by design, are supposed to object to this sort of behavior. So some of them are wisening up to that reality, whether it's for their own personal political ambitions of reaching higher office or because they do truly care about their constituencies. Doesn't matter. They're doing something. The Republicans, on the other hand, this is what they're doing. This is what they were voted in to do.
As we continue to put the spotlight on this injustice, that they ultimately will have to let him go. I believe that will be the case because I believe people will keep pressing for justice.
Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen joining us live tonight from El Salvador. Sir, thank you again for making time to be here and helping us understand this and explain it to our audience. Please keep us apprised. I know a lot of people are worried about you being there, given what's going on between our government and the government of El Salvador and the kind of language used by their president in talking about this standoff. So please be safe, keep us apprised, and we'll look forward to having you back on soon.
What's he going to do?
Will do. Thank you, Rachel.
You're literally acting like a panic hand right now, loser.